he writes in the 1700s in his book Morvik Tzia, which is like on the Shulchan Aruch, he says, I'll tell you what. He says, Lefi hanira ein zo derech yeshara. It is inappropriate for anybody to cover themselves with a talis. Because why? He says that he says you don't lo hayu yodim mitach bula zo. You think in the Gemara times no one thought of this trick that you can cover yourself with a talis? He says v'haya lahem leve'er takana zo. If it was okay, then the Gemara should have said to do it. It's not like rocket science to say, hey, cover yourself with a talis. He says shishon atali, cover your hands. Bekalav shalasot, and it's so easy to do. Ela vadai, rather the Rav Yaakov Emden says Shmami nami delo ishtamish talmuda lahazkir davar zeh. Since the Gemara did not mention it, al korchach, you must say de'ein nachon lechasot hayadayim betalit v'lo apanim. Must be that the Gemara feels that you should not be covering with a talis, not the Kohanim and not the audience members. That's what he comes out against this whole thing. He says it's a new thing. I don't know who started it. I don't know where it comes from, the 1500s, but you shouldn't do it. He says, what is the reason? He says, I don't know why, everything has a hidden reason, but he wants to say that maybe there's an issue. He says that it would be like you're showing like a separation, which you shouldn't have this kind of a thing. If you're getting a bracha, then you shouldn't make like a boundary between you and that bracha. So he's really anti this thing. However, well, I mean, it's universal. I mean, Kohanim all, he says no one should, Kohanim or people, but you see Kohanim do it all over the world, so no one really cares about Rav Yaakov Emden too much on this point, but, at least audience members, anyway. But now the Kaf HaChaim. The Kaf HaChaim writes like this. The Kaf HaChaim is is a Sephardi from Baghdad, halacha sefer from the past 100 years, and he writes really a whole different way. He says, first of all, there is no such thing as chatzitza. There is no din of chatzitza by a bracha. So he says this. He doesn't explicitly talk about Rav Yaakov Emden, but it seems that that's what he's talking about. He says, look, there's no such thing as making a boundary. Like, that's for going to the mikvah. But you don't have, for tefillah you have that, but you don't have it for a bracha. So there's no problem with putting your talis on. Now he also brings down that there is another issue, and that's the Zohar. He says that the Zohar does say that you are never supposed to look at the Kohanim, whether it is in the Beit HaMikdash or not in the Beit HaMikdash. It's like a universal thing. That's what he brings down from the Zohar. What?
You can't look at a Kohen?
During Duchening, with no talis. Hands out, whether in the Beit HaMikdash or not. And again, the Mishnah Brura, he says that's only in the Beit HaMikdash that you can't even glance. But he says, according to the Zohar, that's all the time. But again, if we have our, Kohen covering his hands, then we should be just fine and everything cool. However, now you say, but wait a second, what about this thing that you always see, all the dads, that they have their little kids run to be under the talis with their dad? Where did that all come from? Well, I'll tell you, where that comes from is like this, they say, so what happens if you're a person, you don't have a talis? Right? So you can't cover yourself. But again, that's assuming, I imagine, that the Kohanim have their hands out. But anyway, what do? So therefore, it says, they bring down from the Baal HaTanya that he would cover he says like this, Harav Baal HaTanya hayem mechaseh betalito et pnei banav haktanim. He would cover up the little kids. So we already know, at least from the 1700s, that this is something that they would do, that the little kids would go under the talis. They don't have their own talis. All right. Now there's one other very exciting source that says that you are never supposed to look at the Kohanim. What? Yeah, because they have their own talis. Right. It's great. Now look at this. This is Piskei Tshuva, which is one of these modern day nice halacha books. And it says, you should really never look at Kohanim at all. Why? Because the Zohar HaKadosh says that you're not supposed to do that. And many poskim also bring down that besides the Zohar, it says that in the Nachal Eshkol. Oh, did I bring down the Nachal Eshkol? I was in the other room. The Nachal Eshkol also says, the Nachal Eshkol is a commentary to Sefer HaEshkol. Sefer HaEshkol is one of these early Ashkenazic halacha books. The Nachal Eshkol is a commentary on it, and there he says that even in modern times you should never look at Kohanim. Even though he doesn't say from the Zohar, but he's basing it presumably on the Eshkol. However, this is just a hilarious proof because, as some people know, that the Nachal Eshkol was written by, well, basically it's a forgery. See, people always knew that there was a book called the Eshkol, and one day somebody came out and he says, hey, I found the manuscript of the Eshkol, and I wrote a commentary on it, the Nachal Eshkol, and he put it out there. And then what happened was...
the Eshkol is a forgery?
Yeah, the Eshkol is the forgery, and then the forger then wrote his own commentary on it called the Nachal Eshkol, yes? Now what's hilarious about this is that he says that there were he put out 3 volumes, and he says there is a 4th volume. Now, when he died, nobody could find any manuscripts of it, because presumably there are no manuscripts of it. But then later on, somebody actually did put out the 4th volume of the Eshkol.
Which is a forgery?
What? Which is a forgery of a forgery. I mean, it's just, goes beyond. But luckily, we have a real Eshkol also. By now, they did find the real Eshkol. There is a real Eshkol out there too. So there's 2 competing ones. But the one that they bring down as the source for this idea that you can't look at Kohanim even in this time is really, that's why it's funny that it's here from that
so
it's a forgery.
How do you know which one is a forgery?
Oh, there are 2 versions of it. There are just 2. The one I have the forgery here. There's the forgery. Well, you can get it for cheap. It's like 15 shekels. Who's gonna buy it?
With the Perush.
But with the Perush, it's very exciting. But the other one is
that's $50.
The Albeck edition. The Albeck Nachal Eshkol is the real one. That's the real one.
Wait, there's real Nachal Eshkol also?
What? No, there's no real Nachal Eshkol.
Yeah.
Nachal Eshkol is a commentary that he wrote.
It's a forgery on the forgery.
Yeah, he's a forgery. Famous forgery. Now, okay, so there you go. That is the story of Birkat Kohanim. So what have we learned so far? We have learned that again, the Rav Yaakov Emden says, since they didn't do it in the olden days, we shouldn't be doing it now. But the bottom line is, from the 1500s, either Kohanim or audience members came up with this idea to cover themselves with talesim. Presumably in Gemara times they didn't do that. But again, as long as the Kohen covers his hands with a talis, you are good to go in the audience, and don't be scared, and everything's going to be fine. All right.
You can even look at them.
What? There's nothing to look at. You could look at this ghostly form. Yes, there's nothing to look at. There's nothing to look at.
I've never seen that.
What's the whole pencil saying you can go blind? I never look.
Yeah, but the Gemara says you can go blind.
Yeah, with the top. Like,
No, you can't go blind anymore. Unless but again, according to the Zohar, if the talus slips off, you could be in trouble.
Okay, fine. So
There you go.
that gets you not to look.
That's what you give the Kohen, stick 'em. Like the
Only if he's got weird hands.
Then you're going to be distracted. But again, Yarden.
No, but if it slips off,
No, now you're going to see it and you're
No,
going to be distracted
then
because
it's
you're used to not seeing
shame.
it. You think you should.
But I'll tell you, but Yarden, the thing is that if you're a person who's very easily distracted, then maybe you shouldn't even look at covered Kohen. I don't know. It might be.
Never distracted.
Now,
it's interesting, the Sephardi, Rabbi David Yosef, who gives halacha shira.
Yeah.
There's a Sephardi minhag, I don't know if you've ever seen, for the fathers to put their hands on their sons' heads.
Right.
They're blessing
Like
them.
they give a bracha.
And he says it's completely, they
Yeah.
shouldn't do that.
That's baloney. That's complete baloney. That's somebody made it up. I don't know, because once you
Right.
take your kids
Not
under the talus with
When
you,
they turn their backs to the Kohen.
yeah, because the kids are turning toward the dad.
It's wrong.
See, I'll tell you how I think it started was, the little kids are coming out of under the talus with the dad, right? So you got some like six-year-old kid, and the father's like, you better stay under this talus, yeah? And then the kid is like, So the father grabs him like this to hold him into that talus. And then eventually people said, oh, you're giving him a bracha, but it's the Cohanim giving us it. Anyway, now, let's look at the rainbow.
Or not.
There is this issue of, the Gemara said also not to look at a rainbow. Now this seems to be Beit HaMikdash, no Beit HaMikdash, not to look at a rainbow. And because it's like the Shekhinah and all of this, also the rainbow. Very nice.
Don't we have a bracha over
We have a
saying
bracha.
that?
Oh, that's classic. So let's see what the Torah
Is
says.
Israel following the rainbow? Or
So here it comes. The Torah says, "Haroeh hakeshet." When you see a rainbow, you say, "Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, zocher habrit," right? V'nema v'brito. This is a bracha you say. V'asur listakel bo harbe, and you can't look at it too much. That's the idea. Now, the Beit Yosef brings down, what was this whole
I think
idea?
there's a general halacha not to stare, and that's where all this comes from.
Oh, that's what it's impolite.
Right.
You want to offend that rainbow.
Yeah, the rainbow, it doesn't like it. Now, it says like
One
this.
coming out of the hose.
Look, if the challah is getting embarrassed from the kid,